It is still technically morning, so good morning, everyone. Okay, to do that better. Good morning, everyone. It is so nice to see you all here on a lovely fall morning on the Yale campus. Hopefully, for those that this is your first time on the Yale campus, you've got to experience some of what I feel is part of the magic of this place, particularly in the fall. I'm a fan of this place in 3 out of 4 seasons, so I'm glad everyone can guess the winter is a little gray around here. I am Rob Klee. I am a senior lecturer over at the Yale School of the Environment. I'm also the managing director of clean energy programming at our Center for Business and the Environment. And for those who have been coming up to me and will come up to me all throughout the conference, I'm also one of the lead faculty for our online programs, both our Financing and Deploying Clean Energy program and our Clean and Equitable Energy Development program. And today, I am here to welcome you to something that is now an annual tradition for us. It is our showcase of our Planetary Solutions in Clean Energy Summer Fellowship program. And you are going to hear from today 10 of our amazing summer fellows who have been, due to the very generous support of a couple of Yale alumni, been able to experience this world of clean energy, often for the first time, through a summer internship, and hopefully find ways into this space because of that experience that they've had over the summer. So they're going to give you an overview of the work that they've done over this summer. And that's a real treat because they've been working for an amazing set of host organizations. And I think we have some of those host organizations here in the room in person. Some are joining by Zoom. And I want to thank all of those hosts for being a part of our Planetary Solutions in Clean Energy summer program. They really helped make this summer an incredible experience for our students, and we are very grateful. So you're going to hear about the work that these fellows did over the course of their summer on energy policy, energy development, deployment, and new this year on energy tech, which is kind of a really cool part of this growing summer series. Now, before I turn the stage over to them, because they are way more interesting than I am, I want to give you a sense of what this program is, in case we have anyone in the audience who might want to do it next year, for anyone who's one of our Yale students. The program offers this summer internship research opportunities for students at Yale who are committed to advancing energy development, deployment. Energy equity is often a component of our projects, and hopefully pursuing a career in clean energy. Then they get this chance to work with these amazing people at our host organizations on some pretty terrific projects. So for those in the audience who are thinking, hey, I'd love to have a super talented Yale student work for me for a summer, come up to me afterwards. We can talk. We'd love to have folks grow our network of hosts and summer opportunities. Now, we tend to partner with nonprofit, low-profit government organizations. We partner also with B Corps and startups and others. So it's a wide array of the different elements of this clean energy ecosystem. Now, while they're at Yale, my students, and we do this sometimes in person, sometimes virtually, we meet weekly as a group. We do individual mentoring sessions. We also go on a local a clean energy field trip here in Connecticut, which is often a highlight of the summer or early fall. And we have a weekly Lunch and Learn series where all of our hosts share the work that they're doing, where we can learn from them. And that's kind of the spirit of today, is you're getting that kind of lunchtime talk from our 10 amazing students. And hey, we pay them. And we pay a relatively competitive stipend for the summer. So if you're a student out there that wants to do this in a future summer, also come up to me afterwards. So that's enough out of me. We are going to have all of our students come up. The first one to come up is Thomas, who partnered with EED Advisory. And as Thomas makes his way up, I will hand over the microphone and the clicker to him.
Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Commander, and as I'm sure you can probably tell from my slide, I was hosted this summer by EED Advisory. I'm a member of the Yale class of 2027, and I'm majoring in environmental studies, but I have a focus on economics and policy, which matches really well onto my interests, which are mainly in resource management, clean energy, and international development. So that sort of flowed very well into my internship this summer with EED Advisory, which is a Pan-African development consulting firm. And they focus most of their activities on issues related to the environment. And they have a lot of strength in clean energy, particularly in clean cooking, which I'll expand on. And I think the real strength of this internship for me was the expansion of my technical and professional skills in broadly economic and policy research. And I was able to work on 6 different projects, which touched a dozen different countries in sub-Saharan Africa. They work across the continent. Their headquarters is in Nairobi, but they have offices in Johannesburg, Kinshasa, and Dakar. My projects really covered the range of their activities, but the majority of my work on clean energy had to do with clean cooking. Here you can see a map of all the countries my projects were related to. And a really interesting and I think very strong part of this internship and the work that they do is I got to work on both investor and government side in clean cooking financing. And most of their activities are actually focused on private capital investment in clean cooking. So I should probably break down what clean cooking is, as it was a little bit confusing to me when I was starting out. But unclean cooking technology is a major health and environmental issue. There are an estimated 3.1 million premature deaths annually due to unclean cooking. Here you can see an example of an unclean cooking setup, and most of this is done inside of households, which creates toxic fumes that lead to poor health outcomes. And it's a huge domestic energy problem because it's an emissions issue and also a natural resources issue because most of this contributes to deforestation. And it's 90% of domestic energy use in many developing countries. So to create a clean cooking system is to create a healthier society and a cleaner energy system. So one of the projects I was working on was a due diligence project on a major carbon transaction. The credits were generated via clean cooking intervention. It was a carbon transaction in a West African country, and our client was actually an American impact investment firm. So my work was mainly producing financial models, running a number of energy and market analyses, and I ended up authoring multiple reports to support investment decision-making and running a number of key informant interviews as a part of this project. And then that was on the investor side. On the governmental side, I was working to support EED's national clean cooking framework for a Southeast African country. So I was responsible for research and development of a climate financing mechanism for their clean cooking transition. So incorporating things like a more structured carbon market, green bond programs, and other forms of impact financing to support clean cooking transitions in said Southeast African country. This involved a lot of market and supply chain analysis of various energy sources, a lot of work on LPG and electricity, and again, a number of key informant interviews run. I authored a preliminary governance baseline study and a number of comparative economic analyses to support directly our sovereign client. So an interesting thing is the actual impact of this financing work. In a changing development landscape, private capital is becoming far more important. So the work that EED is doing and the work that I fortunately was able to do this summer was actually in supporting this flow of private capital into clean energy and impact-focused investment. Again, I worked on both investor and governmental side to sort of cover the entire landscape, or not entire, but a big portion of that landscape. And this did shape my career ambitions and coursework going forward. I'm taking a number of courses on environmental economics and carbon credits this semester and next semester. And again, I was able to broaden my skills in financial modeling and political economy research. I would like to really just thank the Center for Business and Environment and their funders for making this internship possible. I was working in person in Nairobi, which wouldn't have been possible without that funding. Additionally, I'm really grateful to the EED team for having the generosity to host me this summer. Lastly, here's my contact information. I'd love it if we could stay in touch. I am definitely open to talking more about these topics. Thank you.
I should have said this at the beginning. These are flash TED Talks, but 1 minute for questions. So if there is a burning question, we can take one question for each of our presenters. If we have one. What's your favorite part? What's your favorite part?
That's a great question. I actually think I didn't talk about this enough probably in my presentation, but I was running a lot of key informant interviews as part of my work there. And so I got to talk to kind of a range of people, whether they were government ministers or people working for engineering firms on the continent. And I think that was probably one of the most valuable parts of this experience. And probably it's just part of consulting in general is the breadth of their sort of topic base. And so I got to learn a lot more than just what was going on in the project.
All right, next up we have James Freeman, who partnered with host Rewiring America.
Hi everyone, can you all hear me okay if I don't use the mic? Awesome. Hi everyone, I'm James Freeman. I'm a master's student at the Yale School of the Environment. And this summer I worked with Rewiring America. Rewiring America develops accessible, actionable data and tools and builds coalitions and partnerships to make going electric easier for households and communities. It helps people save money, tackle emissions goals, improve health, and build the next generation of the clean energy workforce. Their goal is to electrify everything and to do it fast while making sure it's easy and affordable. At Rewiring America, I helped build a strategy to expand one of their programs in Colorado, bringing huge discounts on electric heat pumps to low to moderate income folks. I analyzed dozens of counties and cities to suggest priority partnerships. And based on several criteria, including potential savings, state, local, and utility rebates, and Rewiring America's existing network, I made the case for Denver as their next priority partnership. I also helped create this external-facing doc that helps describe the program offerings and makes the pitch. It talks a bit about the work they've done with their pilot in Boulder and gives communities the information they need to reach out if they're interested in partnering. And just last week, I heard that my research directly led to their successful launch of a program in Denver, which was really exciting news. In addition to research, I completed a 4-week training called Electric Coaches. We learned the basics of electrification and how to guide people in making a switch. So for the next few minutes, I actually want to walk you through how each of you can think about your electrification journey. One of the first steps is helping people find their why it might make sense for them to electrify. That could be reducing greenhouse gas emissions to mitigate climate change, improving indoor air quality to protect your health, or it could just be reducing your energy bill and saving you potentially a lot of money. All are reasons to care about electrification. The point is that there are things that we have control over, and our decisions really matter. So for some quick background, there are 5 main decisions you can make when you're thinking about going electric. You can think about how you cook your food and the benefits of switching to induction cooking, how you heat your home or water and how you can save money with a heat pump, how you can cut your transportation emissions with an EV, and even how you dry your clothes, another place that heat pumps, both like the superhero and literal Rewiring America mascot, can shine. Some of these slides are just to show you the wealth of information that's available on the Rewiring America website. Here are some of the main decisions you can make in what you buy that have the biggest impact. I won't make you read all of that, but just know that it's all there for you to peruse at your leisure. And so if you're thinking, yeah, that's all great, but how do I even know where to start? Rewiring America has a personal electrification planner that can guide you step by step. And here's what the electrification planner page looks like. It's very inviting. You answer these 6 basic questions, and then you get tailored information about how much things are likely to cost before rebates and how much you're likely to save on your energy bill. And information about all the rebates available and links to where you can get them. They list the federal rebates available, many of which, as you can see, are slated to expire December 31st, so now is really the time, as well as rebates that are specific to your state, city, and utility provider. You can use all of this to get a good estimate to know how much your project will actually cost after rebates and discounts. And after that, you get a step-by-step guide that walks you through every stage of the process. Here's one that's specific to heat pumps as an example. And shout out to all the renters in the room like me. There's a lot you can do. There are resources on the website that can help you figure out how to go electric on your own or how to talk to your landlord equipped with data. This tool can help us understand how our individual decisions matter. It reminds me that there are things I can more immediately control that can make a difference, or at least if your why is on the more existential side like mine is. Otherwise, this tool can just be a great guide to help you save money. And here's just a screenshot of the Rewiring America homepage to show you how fun it is in case my pitch so far wasn't enough. I'll close with how all of this shaped how I'm thinking about my career after I leave the School of the Environment somehow in 2 months. It helped me as a professional think about how I can dispel myths that there's always a trade-off between affordability and sustainability. Before coming to YSE, I worked for 4 years in local government, writing environmental and energy legislation. Seeing the impact that sound policy can have on electrification viability, but also the gaps that still exist, left me excited to go back into the policy space. Specifically, advancing community-led sustainable development to create vibrant, affordable, resilient cities. I'm really, really grateful to the fantastic, brilliant, hilarious Rewiring America team for having me, and to CBay staff and Planetary Solutions funders for making it all possible. Thank you. Thank you to the rest of my cohort and to the wonderful Julie Vance. And thank you all for being here.
Any quick questions? One in the way back. Shout it out, Matt.
Rewire America looked at the BTU equivalencies of natural gas to electricity in different climates. I mean, does it really save money in most places in America?
That's a really great question. So when you put in your address into like the personal electrification planner, it'll tell you honestly whether or not you're likely to save money based on where you live and the climate of that specific place. And if you put in certain places, it'll say, you know, you might lose a little bit of money here, but like here, you know, some reasons you consider it, and maybe don't switch to an electric heat pump, but maybe do consider this other alternative. So they'll give you an honest answer on there.
So I know that Block Power in New York did this in a lot of places, and it's almost a catastrophe because most people's costs went up.
All right, thank you. Next up is Audrey, and Audrey partnered with Oxalis Energy.
It's morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Audrey Muruga-Gatera. I'm a student here at Yale College, majoring in environmental engineering. I'm actually a senior and advanced French as well, and I hail from the beautiful land of Thousand Hills, Rwanda. And this summer, I interned with Oxalis Energy, and they are a company at the forefront of creating green methanol. So throughout this presentation, I'll walk you through my roles, any key performance highlights, as well as some final reflection. So a little bit about Oxalis Energy. They're a company at the forefront of redefining clean fuel innovation, and they do so by creating a simple and highly scalable method of converting waste CO2 into valuable fuel. And so they do so by this simple system feeds onto just CO2 and water to create this methanol. And their goal, to be honest, is to decarbonize hard to abate sectors like aviation and shipping. You just heard from James that mentioned how you can electrify everything, but however, the shipping and aviation industries are far from that realization. And a fun fact about Auxilus as well is that they're a Yale-founded startup, and so they were established in Seabay's own climate innovation intensive program. Onto like my internship framework. For 10 weeks, I was an electrochemist intern, and I served under the research and development team, where I dealt with an MEA system that produces this methanol through an electrolysis method that is aided by a catalyst. So a membrane electrode assembly, for those that don't know much about it, is like a system that, it's a central component for electrolyzers, which is the core of Auxilus's technology, and they work, and there are devices that help in fuel cells and electrolyzers for electrochemical reactions, and they feed on things like electrodes, membranes, and as well as gases and fuels, as well as gases and liquids to produce that fuel. And I want to also highlight that the catalyst that we used at Auxilus was actually developed here at Yale under C.T. O'Connor-Rooney's PhD research. And in terms of my internship timeline, it was divided in 4 phases. I think of it in 4 phases. Like the first 2 weeks, I was getting my footing in the lab, learning from my supervisors and understanding the lab technologies. And the second to 5th week, I was leading material preparations, including electrolytes, activating some membranes, and focusing much on optimizing the MEAs that we're using in lab. The 5th and 8th to the 8th week, I started designing and executing my own experiments and contributing to the catalyst optimization, as well as the optimizing the electrode materials. The last phase, which is actually my favorite one, I led one of the projects that investigated failure mechanism with these MEA cells and monitored MEA operation conditions. I walked away with a bunch of skills, technical and soft skills. So on the technical side, I learned more about experiment designing and electrochemical testing. I learned more about data analysis, as well as its interpretation and literature review and research synthesis of things that are already out there and knowledge that we could use within the lab. On the softer side, during our weekly update meetings, I learned more about scientific presentation and reporting, as well as clear communication and teamwork and problem-solving adaptability, mainly due to the fact that I was analyzing raw data and figuring out the next steps and asking the right questions. Key performance highlights. Throughout my time there, I was able to achieve a bunch of stable and replicable electrochemical experiments. I transitioned from just being an observer in lab to independently designing my own experiments, and I also contributed to the next staging of MEA cell scaling. So at the beginning of the presentation, you saw a stack. So we moved from one stack to another throughout, and they are still building this electrolyzer, and so being able to be part of that scaling was really important. And then in terms of media features, I was actually featured in the Yale Clean Energy Forum around about my experience as a fellow, as well as my internship experience. And then a few final remarks. Most of you, like me, have heard of cathode, anode, and the whole realm of the chemistry around an electrolyzer. However, at Auxilus, I gained the hands-on experience of how to utilize this research and this technology, as well as startup innovation. This is a startup company. They are really innovative, and they really inspired me a lot, mainly because I'm also passionate about startups, as I took part in the Climate Innovation Intensive in their 3rd cohort as well. And now, moving forward, I'm a senior, and I'm doing my senior research on redox desalination that uses this same electrolysis method and MEA assembly to produce sustainable and life-changing water treatment solutions. This is my contact information for those that would love to hear more about what I'm doing and what I learned from Auxilus. Thank you so much, and have a good day. One question?
A question for all. Oh, one over there.
Yes.
You spoke about methanol for aviation. Can you talk about the specific use case where you're going to be using methanol? Is it for something like alcohol to jet, or is it some other tech pathway that you're looking at?
Wait, repeat that one more time.
So you spoke about methanol for aviation.
Yes.
Can you talk about the use case? Is it going to be used as a fuel,
Yes, it could be used as a fuel, also for shipping, because we're not going to electrify airplanes anytime soon, or like the ships that we use for transporting goods. And so green methanol is one of the leading green fuels that can replace fossil fuels that we use for these industries. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You again, Audrey. So next up, we have Emily, who partnered with the Virginia Conservation Network. And as Emily is coming forward, you've already seen the diversity of our students who are working. I love the pictures in the lab, by the way, Audrey. They are super cool. Audrey would always come to our weekly meetings and educate us on chemistry, and which is always a super treat. But you've now seen consultants and policy developers, and that's where I think Emily is going to talk about as well. So Emily, it's all yours.
Hello, good afternoon. I think it's afternoon. I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Emily Kim. My undergraduate studies are focusing really on the intersection between policy, energy, and economics. And this summer, I had the opportunity to work with the Virginia Conservation Network as a Green Buildings Fellow. Essentially, I'm tackling this impossible question of how can we decarbonize the building sector? So, I want to first kind of to walk you through the issue that we're trying to tackle. Buildings take up, either through direct or indirect emissions, they take up more than 30% of global emissions. How can we then address that? Of course, because there are 30% of emissions, it's really important that we identify buildings as a sector that we can decarbonize. But of course, there are a lot of policy challenges, but also economic challenges. So with the Virginia Conservation Network, we tackled Virginia as an ideal target for decarbonization because at the end of the day, Virginia has rapid data center growth. And because there's rapid data center growth, there's going to be high demand for energy. With this high demand for energy, we need to find policy reform that can allow and appeal to numerous stakeholders on how we can decarbonize, because there are essentially 2 or 3 benefits, including you'll save on your electricity bills, but also we can find more equitable solutions for these energy efficiency building upgrades. So I want to walk you through a little bit of my project with the Virginia Conservation Network. I worked with Wes and McKenna. Wes is a YSC alum, and he kind of spearheaded this project on how we can actually pitch to Virginia legislators on how to decarbonize buildings. I focus on 3 main policies, which is building codes, implementing model stretch codes, as well as implementing energy benchmarking reform. So why building codes? Building codes essentially are the performance standards that a building should be performing at. And with the Virginia's recent Clean Economy Act, it's really important that the Virginia Energy Codes meet that standard for the implementation of things like baseline for model stretch codes or energy benchmarking programs. Right now, a lot of Virginia's energy codes are falling behind with how they should be performing. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I did for the model stretch codes research and the energy benchmarking research. So model stretch codes. What are model stretch codes? These are essentially where there's a standard for the building codes, and we focused on multifamily and commercial buildings. Because these buildings are a lot bigger, and these are not residential buildings, we're really focusing on understanding what are other states doing, and how can Virginia, tackle having incentives, what frameworks can we use? And recently with the Virginia elections, I think there's going to be a lot of progress and work that can be done for implementing model stretch codes. But I think the key kind of component that we need to understand when thinking of buildings is actually energy benchmarking. And why energy benchmarking? Energy benchmarking allows us to look at this data, and once we look at the data of how buildings are performing, we can set a building performance standard. And once we have a building performance standard, this can help optimize building energy use, which is not only cost effective, but also helping to decarbonize all the building sector, and also think of equity solutions for, how we can kind of have incentives for communities that are less, are more disadvantaged in their buildings. So I want to just walk you through a little bit about the Dillon rule versus home rule, and these are what state legislators have. So essentially, Virginia is a Dillon rule state, meaning that to implement anything in the city, you need to get an ordinance passed through the state. That's a big challenge that a lot of states and cities face because Virginia Conservation Network is in Richmond, Virginia, and we were trying to do we're trying to lobby for this to be happening in Richmond. But the main caveat is that we cannot, as a city, implement any benchmarking program unless it's passed at a state level. So this is something that we are really looking at, and my kind of main focus was interviewing a lot of stakeholders. Colorado has an amazing benchmarking program, but there are also other states and cities that have really good building energy policies. And so what I did was I created a data set, including all the stakeholder opinions, and tried to understand what recommendations we can make. And I drafted a couple internal policy memos that would help address how we can lobby for there to be, a little more energy, more building reform at the state level. And this really happened, and I think we are trying to gain traction with the current new governor. Yeah, these are the quick takeaways. Essentially, energy benchmarking is really important, but I also really want to thank the Center for Business and Environment at Yale for really giving me this opportunity, but also for my Virginia Conservation Network. Jaime, Wes, and McKenna have been amazing in this journey. This is also my email if you want to contact me, if you want to talk further, but thank you so much.
Quick question for Emily.
I guess how is Virginia's Virginia's has an investor-owned utility Dominion that controls a lot of the efficiency. How were you guys interacting with Dominion, or because there are obviously large stakeholders?
Yeah, definitely. So I think we were having conversations with Dominion and other utilities at the latter half of the stage because I think we wanted to first have stakeholder conversations with people who were more supportive of these policies. I think Dominion is generally more on board, but really what we were focusing on was how can we think of which unions could we look at, which people could we look at that could be supportive, because of course these homeowners won't like it. It might be an extra workload for utilities as well, but I think Dominion in general has been more on board, which is very promising with the new governor.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And I know there was another question in the back. I'm going to invite everyone to stay after and meet up with our amazing speakers and have one-on-one conversations with them as well. But I appreciate your all's interest and desire to ask more questions. But we have to keep you moving, which is part of our challenge today. Next up is Catalina, who partnered with Undaunted K-12, which is a name of an organization. I always love Undaunted. Catalina, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here today. My name is Catalina Mahe, and I'm a senior at Yale studying global affairs with an advanced certificate in Spanish. And I'm excited to tell you about my work at Undaunted this summer. So let's get started. First, I want to start off with two important facts. First is that public schools emit an equivalent of 15 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions each year. And second is that climate change is severely impacting public schools. So as you can see in the images, floods, droughts, and wildfires are impacting school infrastructure to the point that students are prevented from going to school for days, weeks, and months at a time. This is an intersection that deserves attention, and that's actually exactly what Undaunted is doing. So our mission is to support K-12 public schools in their transition to zero carbon emissions, and also to make sure that youth have the resources to build towards a sustainable future in a rapidly changing climate. One of the ways that we do this, and one of the ways that I participated in this, was through our extreme weather database. So right now, Undaunted is the only organization in the nation that is keeping track of how extreme weather events are impacting schools and student learning. And the way that we do this is through our database. So this database, which is on our website, shows school closures due to different kinds of extreme weather events, such as extreme heat, flooding, wildfires, droughts, and extreme cold. And it tracks those by the kind of disruption that they are and how many students they impact. So you can see on our map that the size of the circle is correlated to the number of students impacted, and the color is tied to what kind of extreme weather event it is. So as of July 2025, we have logged over 550 district closure events for the 2024-2025 school year, and over 8,000 schools that have closed in this past year alone due to extreme weather events. So clearly, there is a lot of need and necessity to understand what the scale of climate change is, what the scale of the impact of climate change on students' learning experiences. Another way that Undaunted was supporting this mission was through federal tax credits. So taking you back to 2022, with the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed, there was a provision that schools that were interested in upgrading to clean energy technologies like solar, electric vehicles, and ground source heat pumps could receive a reimbursement from the government for these upgrades. So schools are able to actually receive reimbursements for millions of dollars to make sure that their schools are more sustainable. Unfortunately, this summer, the administration rolled back many of these tax credits. So now there is a complex new landscape that superintendents and facilities directors have to navigate to understand if they can still receive reimbursements, sometimes for projects that are already underway. And Undaunted played a role in this by making sure that we have resources available for superintendents to understand. So I was helping in this effort by helping to draft infographics, for example, or a new website that detail and break down exactly by legislation what tax provisions are still available and which ones are being rolled back, to make sure that school leaders who are focusing on their day-to-day activities can understand if they can still continue these facilities upgrades or if they have to stop them. So this was a great learning experience for me personally, because we were working on the ground, very rapid turnover, to try to understand how is this new legislation changing the landscape for school district leaders. And this was not the only work that I did this summer. I was also helping to draft website and blog posts that told the stories of schools that had been able to complete these renovations. And specifically, I'm working on a case study on Manchester Public Schools here in Connecticut that upgraded to be net zero energy, which is a fantastic achievement, and it was a great learning experience to understand how they were able to achieve that renovation. I also drafted data analysis instructions for our extreme weather database. So I helped to understand what statistics we can pull from them and who we can share them with. So you can see a few of the resources that we put together. This is our extreme weather and school closures methodology note, and some of the blog posts about schools that were able to use those federal reimbursements to upgrade their infrastructure. And this summer produced many, many benefits for me. So first, I realized the interest that I have in climate. And so I have this interest in education and in health, but I'm really learning about a new sector and how they intersect. And that was just a great learning experience. And especially, I also loved the people that I worked with. And I realized how such a small team, because Undaunted is only a team of 8 people, can make an outsized impact. So there are many schools over the country who are using our resources and learning to understand these federal regulations because of our work. And I'm so inspired by the passion of the people on our team in making this happen. So in the future, I'm continuing to work with Undaunted, specifically with our extreme weather database, and I'm interested in exploring the climate and education sectors further. So I am very grateful for this experience, and I'm thanking CBAE and Undaunted, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Question for Catalina.
Yes.
Right here. One.
Well, it's a good one.
Okay.
Did Undaunted focus on curriculum for the students so they can learn more about clean energy?
Yes, that's one of the things that we're doing. So we also work on a seal of climate literacy, which is kind of a curriculum and graduation requirement that students can start to take over the next few years, where they'll become more proficient in like climate-related classes and receive recognition for it on their diploma.
And so the research that you did regarding the taxation, tax credits, Can we find all that information on the website?
Yes, it's undauntedk12.org, so please look through.
And those were two really good questions. Catalina, thank you. Well done. So next up, we have Yui, who was partnered with our Clean Energy States Alliance. So Yui, come on up.
Hello everyone, my name is Yue Nguyen, and today I'll be telling you about my summer at the Clean Energy State Alliance. So first up, the Solar for All program grants a total of $7 billion across 60 grantees consisting of states, territories, tribal organizations, and multi-state nonprofits with the goal to bring solar energy to low-income households. Why this is important is because according to the Department of Energy, low-income households incur costs of between 9 to 30% of their income on energy bills. The Solar program works by giving grants or low-interest loans to households to install solar panels, saving them around $400 annually in costs. This program projected around 4 gigawatts of energy annually, which is around taking 7 million cars off the road per year. My job was to help these organizations launch this program by the end of the summer. I worked on 3 main projects this summer. The first was the Solar Equity Digest, where I worked on reporting on solar energy demands and uncertainties in the solar markets, especially with the reconciliation bills. I also set aside weekly office hours, bringing together our grantees together to find out more about the Solar for All program and help answer any questions that I have. And I think my most important job was actually making a website template for the grantees. So, originally, my goal was simple: make all 60 grantees have a clear, consistent website that their community that can serve the community. Originally, every organization had their own websites that were very with mixed messaging and little to no information. When one website are confusing, people do not apply. For example, this is Maryland's website on my left right here. That's only give basic definition. Like this is everything that they had. Nothing about application or your criteria that was needed. So to fix that, I reviewed all 60 sites for criteria, including their clear for the average resident, if the sites included eligibility requirements to even apply to this program, and I studied the 60 grantees' work plans, budgets, and their timelines on when they're rolling out their program, and map those against EPA guidelines. And with that, I managed to create a plug-and-play template, which grantees can just over here we can plug in for each of their individual programs, so that make it clear, easy, and consistent across all 60 grantees, and so people can apply. And at the time, it felt incredibly rewarding to potentially help millions of low-income family access to the Solar for All program. However, like many programs this summer, the Solar for All program was stuck in limbo now due to budget cuts. But in the week after, I was really heartened to see our grantees how dedicated and resilient our grantees are. The first thing they did was mobilize, emailed, and prepared to litigate and fight for the Solar for program. They did not just give up. They were actively pushing back. So I think my biggest takeaway this summer was adaptability and resilience. I learned a lot about I learned how to think on my feet and really just be a leader in time of uncertainty. And I'm really grateful for the Clean Energy State Alliance, especially my supervisor Vera Borgmeyer and Hannah Jones and the Yale Center for Business and Environment and the internship funders for this opportunity. Thank you.
Question for Julie, other than, managing chaos and resilience is a takeaway from any internship.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. All right. Well, I will I will ask you the question that Heather asked of your most memorable moment from this summer.
Oh, I think it was really cool. Like at first, when we got the news that the program was pulled back, I thought it was like, oh, everyone would be like very sad. But like when I first hopped into the Zoom call with like the meeting with everyone was like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're doing this, like we're gonna litigate, we're gonna save it all over thing. Like we're emailing our governors, we're doing all that we can to fight for this program because they really believe in like bringing solar energy for low-income household, especially with the energy transition is very much like higher income households are able to afford like installing solar panels. So it's very much there is inequality within the clean energy market. So I think that like fighting for the relief and really, showcasing their resilience was really nice.
Is it a really quick one?
That's a really quick one.
Okay.
Have you seen any progress in the litigation? Is there any positive results?
Right. I mean, I don't know because I'm out of it, but like I know they said like it's kind of looking pretty okay because a lot of they made it be a bipartisan thing because a lot of Republican governors were able to like, hey, like they was promised and it's like the money already was given to the solar program, so they shouldn't take it back. Like we heard, like we got some people like saying that. So it was like, oh, like maybe we can kind of use these governments to help push these, to help push the litigation through. But right now we're still in a litigation phase. So there's hope.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yui. All righty, next up we have Zev, who partnered with AI on Grid, which is, I think, the right, we've been debating how to say it, but Zev, they're all yours.
All right, yeah. AI on Grid is many things, but it is also hard to say 10 times fast. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zev Pinker. I am a senior at Yale College. I study computer science and energy studies. And this summer I worked with AI on Grid. So AI on Grid is a virtual power plant software startup. And virtual power plants are, to me, kind of the most exciting sector of grid modernization. And it's a really cool application of Internet of Things or IoT technology to coordinate small, modular, and distributed energy resources to coordinate higher efficiency and reduce grid strain during times of peak demand. So first, AI on Grid is, they were founded in China and they're pivoting into the American market, and that takes a few strategy shifts, mainly in marketing strategy and product design. So first, looking to see where was the most potential for marketing, we looked at Connecticut, where Connecticut has some actually very robust demand response incentive programs, and that was the focus of my research at first. And this research, it was a combination of market research and policy analysis, and it culminated in a contribution to a pilot project proposal to the PURA, Public Utility Regulatory Authority, Connecticut's regulatory authority, to their Innovative Energy Solutions program. So we submitted a proposal there, and actually while I was still there, we actually won this project, which was very exciting, and it crossed over a little bit with Catalina's field of work because it's a school virtual power plant and microgrid project. So after we submitted this proposal, my attention was redirected to a more urgent software issue, something that was a major bottleneck in this pivot into the American market. Oh, spoiler. Here's the breakdown. To demonstrate their previous successes and to improve workflow for future projects, they needed to deploy all of their code to the cloud. So my tasks became very clear. I had to create the necessary infrastructure to enable secure customer access to the company's software and to deploy those projects to the cloud. And when I joined, neither I nor anyone at the company is a team of two, none of us had ever worked with a cloud service provider directly. So what became the next obvious choice was to load up Amazon Web Services for the first time in my life and immediately get overwhelmed by all of the available services. It took me about a week to get oriented with the basic tools. the most basic tools. And really with much hubris, I put together a simple cloud infrastructure that looked something like this and thought that I could deploy one of the projects to it. I started with a test project and it worked, but then it became immediately obvious that if I wanted to deploy anything for real world use, I would need something a little more complicated. And in fact, I really had a long way to go before I would arrive at any infrastructure that could accommodate the company's very large software. Virtual power plants are hefty programs. So each of the 3 projects I was to deploy used design frameworks and tools that I had never heard of, and they each contained thousands of configuration files and code files and lots of metadata to sift through. So before I was really able to make any progress on deployment, I had to do a little analysis of the code. So I wrote a couple scripts, and I got kind of a briefing based on that of the structure and the architecture of these projects, and I discovered that they were built out of interconnected, what are called microservices, and that are all meant to be specially wrapped up or containerized, is the term of art, before being deployed to the cloud. And microservice architecture and software containerization are very ubiquitous frameworks in software engineering, but in my coursework and past research, it's not something I had experience with. So it took a little bit of self-teaching. I went through, iterated through some of the levels of complexity of the AWS infrastructure, and finally landed on this kind of broad architecture, which involves some storage, some internet access, some kind of automatic running. So I started to deploy the projects, and ran into a little bit of a bug that proved too deeply rooted to fix in the short time I had left. So the summer ended with a report for the future developers, a functional cloud infrastructure, and really a lot of new skills that I acquired. So here are some of those skills, and I think. And yeah, thank you so much to CBay
So a question for Zev. Ooh, that got a fast question right here.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said the team was the size of 2. Was that like solely the US based? That was like, did you guys like collaborate with the Chinese team, or?
No, that was the whole team, which was a big, both a pro and a con of the experience. Mainly a pro because I got to kind of take ownership over my projects and really make decisions on what I thought needed to get done, and kind of teach myself along the way, which I find is the best way to learn on the job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you've now seen that we've had this diversity of projects and hosts that are some small. Thank you, Zev. Terrific. Well done. Zev was if Audrey was teaching us chemistry, Zev was teaching us about the cloud and web services and programming during our weekly meetings. So thank you to Zev. Next up is Lawrence, who's going to talk about his experience with the Honnold Foundation. So Lawrence, you're next.
Hey everyone. My name is Lawrence Tang. I'm a senior in Yale College studying environmental studies, interested in the intersection of clean energy, food systems, and sustainable development. Through the Planetary Solutions program this summer, I interned at the Honnold Foundation working on solar energy access. To the right is a picture of a pretty nifty solar-powered water pump I saw in Mexico this summer. To talk a little bit about the Honnold Foundation, founded in 2012, the HF partners with marginalized communities to expand solar energy access by funding early-stage community-led projects. Rather than focusing on the technical aspects of solar deployment like some of the other organizations have, HF works primarily at the grant-making level, providing financial support, storytelling and communications assistance, and facilitating regional collaboration between partner organizations. At its core is the belief that communities know best what they need, and HF's role is to help them realize those visions. To support that mission, my internship this summer consisted of 2 main projects. The first was an impact evaluation, a more quantitative look on how HF's funding aligns with its mission and where it could have a a greater impact. And the second project were the partner case studies, which is more of a qualitative look that grounded these numbers and statistics in real-world stories, experiences, to better understand how our partner organizations are deploying solar and what lessons can be learned. The majority of HF's grants come from its yearly core fund. In recent years, HF has deepened its commitment to long-term trust-based partnerships by expanding its multi-year core fund grants. These unrestricted grants give partners more stable, flexible support to plan ahead and stay in their solar work in ways that best serve their communities. HF has always taken a rather broad view of what a solar project can be, viewing solar energy as not just a technology, but as a tool for advancing social and economic equity and building climate resilience. Solar power as a means to build social power. Moving on to the first part of my internship, with HF now partnering with over 97 organizations, I focused on looking at recent core fund grant data. Looking at both successful and unsuccessful applications, I noticed a substantial growth in applications from the Global South, with HF receiving its first ever application submitted in Indonesian last year. There was also a clear increase in applications for rural projects, as well as projects operating at the national and state level rather than just local ones. With this growing international reach, a next step would be to explore how applicants are finding out about HF and its grants in order to help inform future outreach efforts. The second part of my project was the partner case studies with CIDE and Wuchloom. Whereas the impact evaluation provided me with more of a holistic overview of applicants, these case studies provided me a more grounded look at how specific communities are deploying solar as a catalyst for change. I had the chance to travel to Mexico in July to visit two long-term Honnold Foundation partners, CIDE and Wuchloom. Both are multi-year grantees and great examples of how solar can strengthen local autonomy and community well-being. My goal for this portion was to create public-facing case studies that showcased examples of successful solar deployment while capturing the human stories behind it through semi-structured qualitative interviews that captured the social impacts, lessons learned, and everyday experiences of community members. It was incredible to witness how solar energy can catalyze broader social change and also push me to use my Spanish daily and practice active listening. Moving on to the first organization, CIDE. CIDE has partnered with indigenous women in rural Hidalgo, about 4 hours northeast of Mexico City, to address social, economic, and gender-based inequalities. Their unique Tech para Todos program works through a network of community leaders to build digital job literacy and economic opportunities for indigenous women otherwise marginalized. With HF support, CIDE has installed various solar energy systems at rural digital hubs that have powered its technical trainings and workshops, enabling more long-term digital inclusion and literacy. This summer, I had the opportunity to visit the Bordamos Junto collective in San Pablo Grande, where I got to meet Doña Rosa and Diego. This collective focuses on selling colorful handmade tenango embroideries, which you can see in the bottom right picture, and has been one of the communities greatly benefited from the deployment of solar. Previously, they would have to rely on renting spotty, unreliable internet from a local internet cafe, which greatly limited their communication efforts and ability to sustain their business. Now with solar, they have been able to expand their virtual and online presence, joining the Sierra Madre network, a regional alliance of women-led cooperatives that has allowed them to sell to both domestic and international customers. This has also allowed them to cut out the several middlemen in the process that had previously taken away a lot of their profits, allowing this to be a more sustainable long-term solution. For communities tucked away at the edge of visibility, solar access has provided economic opportunities that allow them to preserve their traditional ways of life. The second organization, UYICH, is a grassroots Mayan-led organization based in Sanacat, Yucatan, working to restore biocultural diversity, defend indigenous rights, and promote well-being of communities across Mesoamerica. To help combat the loss of traditional knowledge caused by climate change and social disconnection, UYICH runs a bilingual agroecological center in Spanish and Maya, which is shaped through collective decision-making with the 7 communities it serves. Climate change-induced droughts and drier spells have posed a major threat to local agricultural livelihoods, displacing many from their ancestral lands and forcing them to migrate in search of other economic opportunities. This, combined with a history of past intensive monoculture, has left the soil very weak and has led substantial pollution and runoffs. Solar panels have provided a temporary solution by powering water pumps, enabling more year-round irrigation, allowing more successful agriculture, as well as water for livestock. This land renewal also doubles as a form of cultural renewal, allowing a lot of these indigenous communities to restore ancestral connections with certain lands, practicing traditional agroecological practices such as the Milpa polyculture system, akin to the Three Sisters up here in the Northeast. My main takeaways from the summer are, 1, solar power as a means to build social power, both in terms of providing people economic opportunities to allow them to preserve certain ways of life, as well as allowing them opportunities to other ways of life. And second is the resilience and adaptability of solar solutions. A lot of these communities were able to both self-manage the installation, maintenance, and upgrades to the system, which I think very much challenged kind of a very static, complex conception of solar that I personally had. And then finally, is this idea of cross-cultural storytelling. I think it's kind of clear to most people that I'm not from Mexico, much less in like a town of like 800 people. I kind of stuck out. So it was a really interesting experience kind of being an outsider, being invited into a community, and above all, kind of listening to what they had to tell me and being an active listener. Thank you.
Any quick questions for Lawrence? Did anyone recognize who was in the photo? Oh.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. How was Alex Honnold?
He's a pretty swell guy. I think he's more quiet than I expected.
Perfect question. For those who don't know, Alex Honnold of Free Solo fame, if you haven't seen that documentary where he does a solo climbing of El Capitan in Yosemite, it is one of the scariest movies I've seen, and it's not like a horror. It is like literally an amazing. And he started his foundation because the places he would go climbing tended to have less energy access and less sort of. He wanted to make a difference in the communities. Yeah. Thank you, Lawrence.
All right, next up is Victoria. Who partnered with Ocovate.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Victoria Vilton. I'm a senior studying Earth and Planetary Science and Environmental Engineering. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my time working with Ocovate Sustainable Energy this summer. So, Ocovate is an early stage solar developer that focuses on agrivoltaics, which is a type of solar use that doesn't require the permanent sort of restructuring of traditional land use. So essentially, Ocovate is the go-between for farmers who want solar on their land and the developers who actually build them. We talk a lot with landowners and help them with the permitting process, the electrification process, and also with the design of the solar array. We essentially handle everything up until installation, and because we're a small startup of only about 5 people, it's really easy to keep things personal and easy to work with. This internship gave me a lot of broad experience with research oriented towards a consumer. I learned how important it is to focus on a customer's specific context and orienting solutions to their problems around that specific context. And I'm really excited that I'm still working with Ocovate today. So one of Ocovate's goals when I joined them was to expand their operations into Garrett County, Maryland. And to help, I had to address Maryland's long-standing agricultural land preservation program. This program was established in 1977 to protect traditionally agriculturally oriented land from industrial practices that could destroy the land a little bit. And so to do this, I had to dig a lot into the documents of the Maryland Land Agricultural Preservation Foundation. I spoke a lot with officials in the Garrett County government's office to figure out if there was language or precedent that could be used to address how Ocovate's mission of bringing agrivoltaics to farmers can intersect with also the goal to keep land from industrial practices. This was one of the harder projects that I had to work on this summer because it was a lot of digging through really long documents and trying to understand, can we make these missions align? But in the end, I created this presentation summarizing the preservation program for my bosses and also a list of sort of contacts and steps that Ocovate could follow to make sure that they have everything that they need to address the preservation program. Another major focus of my internship was the creation of informational flyers and blog posts. So Ocovate was invited by the Virginia Dairy Farmers Association to create a flyer to promote cattle voltaics for the dairy farmers in Virginia. And they saw it as an opportunity to increase general awareness about agrivoltaics. So we decided we wanted these flyers to be largely unbiased, kind of acting as a branded way of spreading information about agrivoltaics as it pertains to specific kinds of land use. So we wanted to talk about the advantages, but also the disadvantages and what a farmer should really think about before they consider agrivoltaics to be implemented on their farms. And this was really interesting. I really learned how to dig through academic papers, but also blog posts from one farmer to another farmer, and also solar developing websites to figure out how to consolidate all of that information into one flyer that was easily digestible and approachable to a wide range of audiences. So This was a really great project, and I was able to create multiple flyers. This one is for cattle voltaics, which is for dairy cows. One addressing wheat farmers, and then also one that was just about the general ecological benefits of agrivoltaics. And I'm happy to say that they're being currently distributed to farmers in Maryland today, which is really exciting that my work is actually touching and impacting communities as they make a pretty big decision about bringing solar to their land. So one of the biggest takeaways that I had working with Oakivate is that I really enjoy smaller scale and direct impact work. Oakivate is a smaller startup, but it's working with these big ideas of bringing solar to farmers across America. And I really liked that we had to work interpersonally with individual farmers and figuring out what situations they were working with, what were their problems, and how we could uniquely address those. And I really liked that everything was really geared towards the unique farmer. I also really liked that this was really interpersonal. I got to interact with a lot of different people in the internship. Everyone in the office was really welcoming and really allowed me to learn what they were doing for Oakivate. And then I also got to talk to people at the Land Preservation Foundation and the Garrett County Official Government Office. And it was really an opportunity for me to work on bridging the gap between like my project and like what other people are doing and how we can figure out how we can work together for this one larger goal. I also really appreciated how interdisciplinary my work with Oakivate was. Not only was I kind of reading academic papers to create research, I was also talking to people, and I was also learning how to design solar arrays with my boss, Miles. So I really enjoyed that this was sort of taking me through all different sort of parts of a business, especially in the context of a smaller startup. And lastly, like I mentioned before, Oakivate was really consumer oriented, and I really appreciated that everything that they did was focused on how can we best address this person's problems in a way that works for them. So I just want to thank the team at CBay, and I also really want to thank my bosses, Max and Savannah, for their support, and of course, I want to thank Julie for all of her help in creating this presentation. Yeah, so thank you so much for listening.
And, oh, you got a quick hand right over there.
Great presentation. I'm curious, did you encounter community opposition or misinformation in this space? And if so, how did you address that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, so the way Oakivate works is that farmers usually come to them. So they promote themselves, they'll like spread flyers locally, but then farmers are the ones who actually reach out to Oakivate. So it was more like farmers are the ones saying, we're interested in this. More of the opposition came when I was doing the land preservation program, like when I was researching that, because a lot of it is like figuring out, can agrivoltaics really count as development of land, or is it sort of, is the mission still cohesive with agriculture? So that's more where the opposition came from. Yeah.
Okay, one more really quick question.
I was wondering, is the scale of these projects like farmers using this energy to power their operations, or is it sort of?
Yeah, it's more just keeping the energy, like sort of, they're making a local grid for themselves so that they're, like they have the energy to do their normal operations and potentially even like making a side income from it. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Terrific job. Alrighty, our last up is going to be from a video presentation from Owen, who apologizes that he's actually in class today. I mean, this is one of the challenges of working with Yale students. They actually go to class. They don't, which is a good thing. They should go to class. So you're going to have to just hold with me for a second to see if I can actually successfully do this. All right. I think you're going to be able to hear this, but I will let Owen go.
Hi everyone, my name is Owen Satyawan. I'm a current junior in Yale College studying economics and global affairs. And this past summer I interned at the Philadelphia Green Capital Corps, or PGCC as I like to call it. And I'm really excited just to be able to talk about PGCC and the work that I did this past summer. So just a brief overview of what PGCC exactly is. It's the Green Bank affiliate of the Philadelphia Energy Authority, and it was launched 4 years ago in 2021. And PGCC as a whole does a lot of work of bridging philanthropic, public, and private capital to really drive clean energy and bring investment into energy in the southeastern Pennsylvania region. And they have a really large focus into supporting social impact, especially into low-income communities in the Philadelphia area. And just some of the primary programs that PGCC works in. First, it's a program called Built to Last. And Built to Last is a whole home repair program working to retrofit a bunch of different homes in Philadelphia. Secondly, the Solarize Greater Philadelphia program, which is a program working to bring residential solar to many different households in Philly. And then finally, the Solar for All program, which was a grant program sponsored by the IRA and EPA, but currently isn't operating. And then now to my internship and a lot of the different work that I did this past summer. I really like to think about the work I did into 4 different work streams. So first, just looking at project growth, a lot of my internship work was related towards really helping build out a lot of the projects that PGCC was already working on. So first, I worked on some program procurement for our residential solar programs, and secondly, also worked towards preparing a loan program and a project intake pipeline to grow out other clean energy initiatives. Secondly, towards that philanthropic side, I worked towards grant writing, really looking for other ways that we could bring in capital and worked on narrative and budgets for these different grants. Secondly, thirdly, I did some research just into local solar installations that were already being done in Philadelphia, looking at policy changes that were coming this summer. Just within the clean energy space, a lot of things were changing and being able to understand that. And then thirdly, looking at concessionary capital that was really available in the Philadelphia region to really bridge in a lot more of those different streams of capital. And then the fourth and final bucket that I'm going to expand on a bit more was financial models. This was a bucket where I felt I really learned a lot of skills, really built out a bunch of different new things that I learned this past summer, and really had the opportunity to delve into the clean energy industry, more skill building, and also really understanding a bunch of the work that PGCC was doing. So more to the financial models that I really worked on this past summer, there were 2 big ones that really stuck out to me. First was the Solar for Schools model that I'd worked on. So just a bit about Solar for Schools. Solar for Schools is a grant program that was provided by the Pennsylvania state, and it went to different schools across the state to help them install and pay for solar installations. Some of the schools in Philadelphia were recipients of the grant. However, the grant itself often wasn't enough to really cover the entire cost of these projects. So some of these schools were really looking at bridging the capital. And so some of the work that I had done was looking at modeling the ways that capital could be bridged, also looking at the different changes in the investment tax credit and how these would impact the project's capital and financing. The second model that I did was our SREC revolving fund. So an SREC stands for a Solar Renewable Energy Credit, and these are essentially a way that generation from solar systems can be monetized and sold for some kind of certificate or credit. And so what PGCC does is we have a revolving fund where we purchase them from households, monetizing them, and then sell them off into other entities. And so I was looking at the fund and the viability of the fund and modeling and projecting out just how long at particular market prices, particular purchase and sell prices, that SREC revolving fund really could be existing for. And then just overall lessons I really learned from financial modeling as a whole. One, within the clean energy space, really understanding the high project capital costs that was occurring here. This was something that I think for myself was just really astounding to learn about, but also really shows the amount of investment that really still is needed into the industry as a whole. And then secondly, the policy implications of, for example, the ITC and a lot of the things that came out from the policy sector this past summer, really showing the impacts that policy has into the clean energy industry. Now, finally, just takeaways as a whole from my PGCC internship. One, I didn't mention this earlier, but I am a native from Philadelphia. I was born and raised in Philly, and just being able to work at a place where I saw the impact, I saw the work impacting a bunch of different communities that were surrounding me, and that I grew around upon was just really impactful for myself. Secondly, really reaffirmed my interest into the clean energy industry, into the space, especially with this focus towards capital and looking at the different ways that projects can be grown. I think my time at PGCC really confirmed my interest, really confirmed that I want to be in this space in the future. Thirdly, I touched on capital intensity a bit, but just looking at the ways that investment really can be grown into the space and understanding how different streams of investors, different people can really come to work together and bridge the gap. And then finally, just back to social impact, a lot of the things that I'm very passionate about is really just looking at the ways that different communities can be grown, different communities can be supported. And PGCC did a lot of work really highlighting the social impact, really driving down and ensuring that people weren't just receiving these services, but were also being supported in their needs. And just finally, again, thank you so much to CBay and to PGCC for an amazing summer. It was really amazing, a really great experience, and I really cannot thank them enough for my time at PGCC. Thank you.
So if you give me just one moment, I'll bring up one last slide. And that slide is a thank you. So as we come to a close, I want to start first and foremost with our amazing students, thanking them. How about a round of applause for all the students? So I hope you got a sense of how special what a real treat it is actually for me to get to spend a whole summer with all of them and to hear about the incredible work they're doing across the country, around the world, in Africa, in Latin America. They're in the developer space, they're in the policy space, they are in the laboratory, which I think I always would laugh whenever Audrey would tell us what may have gone right or wrong in the laboratory in a given week. They're in the cloud, Zev always in the cloud. And they're doing impactful work because we found an amazing group of hosts that were willing to take on these students early in their careers and really expose them to the breadth of this industry and all the things that are possible in this industry, even in some challenging times and some times that are putting stress on the system, which I really appreciated Yui's and the CISA folks wanting to just dive right in and say, okay, things have changed, but let's keep action, let's keep moving, let's keep doing things. And I think these group of folks that I get to work with over the summer are the types of folks that you all want working for you, working with you, and making some amazing change.